everyone. And for a video in English language, I decided to do. And I'm gonna cover the German Bundesliga, and still do it in English, and still it is, of course, it's my pet league, my #1 league, the one I grew up with, and the most fascinating, and in some sense, although it's quite a lot of things, quite a few things that are annoying me and that I point out in other videos. And still, this is one, let's say, statistic wise, first of all, and maybe we get by some interesting notes also about rules or about the games themselves, and we'll see here. And why do it in English? Of course, there are those punters all around the world that are trying to make some money with betting, and I think it's the best business there is, and it's a very fair competition, and you can gamble with very low market margins, so to say. So you're supposed to, I mean, the organizers have to make some money, of course. You can't, yeah, well, and but you are, as these probabilities are unavailable to anyone. I mean, you can guess them, you can try to use my approach or any kind of statistics tools, or you can use your impressions while watching the games, and then you simply say, well, Frankfurt are good, so I like them, I'll support them. Or lots of stuff, so you've got plenty of approaches to beat the market. And no one knows the probabilities, unlike in the casino where I say the roulette table is designed, or the roulette, the spin, what is it called? I don't know. I should know. And anyway, to make it very balanced, 1/37 for every single number in there. And so it's designed to make certain you are going to lose, although it's still a very fair game to play, but you ought to lose in the long run. And here in football, no one knows those probabilities, so if your calculation is better and you know the fine points about market as well, why it's leaning this way, or why it's inclined for this team, or why it dislikes another team, and you simply know better. And of course, this is my whole business, and this is what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to show you here in this video, well, about this calculation, and well, yeah, maybe some points in that calculation, but largely the statistics. And of course, there is this whole part of my prediction up here, which is, in some sense, I mean, I'm calculating those goal expectancies, which you can compare in the first place. You can compare those expectancies simply to the goals scored, and of course we will have some deviations there, but we can go through that as well. Where you can also compare the expected shots to the shots taken, whereby I have to say this is unofficial, so those shots are being counted. But you could simply say, well, I saw there was one more shot, or there was another attempt, was blocked shot, I don't know, they didn't count it, no idea. So this is, you know, it's not nowhere going into any official books or something. So, but I'm relying on those, the stats I'm getting on the Bundesliga.de page. And but there are others I'm using too. And sometimes I compare and I see some difference, but usually small differences, but it could happen. The one side says possession 56%, another 52%, or something like that, which for me, it means, do they count the time or do they count the number of passes? And so in this case, you could say, well, of course you can play plenty of passes in your own half quite often, especially if you're a goal behind, because you're not getting tackled there. If the other one are winning, they're happy if you pass the ball in your own half. And thus raise your statistics, where you could also count the time when you say, well, it's the same stuff, right? What matters is, of course, where would you pass the ball, or do you create any danger? But this should be reflected in shots or corners or things like that. And anyway, I'm relying on those stats I'm getting, and I'm comparing them. And of course here I'm also entering them, and I'm updating my expectancies, so to say. So if I would calculate those figures after the match day once again, there would be adjustments. And obviously the adjustment would go the way, Dortmund did not produce any shots. And so this expectancy value would go down because they couldn't fulfill this. So I'm updating it in the way, of course, to expect less than that. And of course, it's being compared to the expectancies from Frankfurt, how many shots they allow or concede, or whatever the right term would be there. Of course, their value would also be affected by that, because they didn't concede so many shots in this game, and so on. So I'm keeping track of that, I'm updating it, and so I'm getting new values out, and there's lots of stuff around that. And so to say, here we do have those expected values in all areas that I'm going to explain, but maybe you know from a former video, but I will get back to that here and there. And here is the real values. So this is here what happened. So here I expected, here's what I expected, here is what happened. And I can compare that, and of course, if I don't have anyone else who makes those kind of predictions, I can't say who was better. I can just compare it to the values I'm getting, and then still say, well, I'm happy, this was okay. And of course, especially if there is some difference to the market. So this means then it becomes important. So I'm comparing, in some sense, those predicted statistics with the ones coming out, and like that, also deciding whether or not this was a good bet. It may be a winning bet, maybe a losing bet, but still may have been a good one. There were the times when I just had to judge it by watching it. So, and I didn't keep track of that. So I had to simply count the winning bets, or count my money every day. So you count your money, say there's something, so I can still buy coffee. And so most likely it's going okay. Or buy new clothes for the children, or pay the rent for the house, or whatever it is. So most likely then you're still in business. But here now you can say, well, this was a good bet. And I'm keeping track of all those stats, and I could possibly show you at another point. But here it does become well, it's a new era. It's a new possibility, at least for me, to check the quality of my bets with this new system that I introduced actually just a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I had a different system, but I'm comparing these still. So usually I just make a bet, or I make a bet if they both agree on that. But I'm not showing you this. So this is my new system, and this is the one, the most important. And here, okay, we can also simply go through the games and then say, well, I'm going to talk about them and possibly decide which were the good teams. And maybe this is very different to what you usually hear. I'm trying to show a few more values that are important in some sense, and maybe you could say, well, you highlighted it, so this is important. What I'm trying to say is there is an expected match value, and this would somehow, it's not a price yet or something like that, a price for the game or something like that. but it is calculating a superiority in a percentage. So in some sense, you could say Dortmund are expected to be 27.18% better in this game than Frankfurt. Starting from 20%, this is when you see those values here. When it comes to 20%, I would say, well, it is a deserved win, or it is, so to say, or you could say this is an expected win in some sense, right? I mean, I drew this line, and it does make pretty much sense, right? And well, I'll go back to that. The pure match value does not take into account the conversion rate. This is the conversion rate. And the conversion rate is a very important value, and because you can produce chances and you're not scoring any goals. So something wrong with either with your chances or with your strikers. So in the long run, I'm going to adjust those probability to score from a chance. So here I'm in some sense just counting. Here you could say this is what they produce. So in some sense it does count how much goal danger they produced. I mean, Dortmund was not a lot, but apart from that, it just counts it and compares it, and so. What was I about to say? Can't remember now. Anyway, this percentage, well, as soon as this value exceeds the 20% mark here, the real value that happened in the game, I would call it also a deserved win. It also does make some sense, because you could say, well, as long as it's within this range here of Leipzig against Hanover, for example, or where is the lower one? Here, Gladbach-Schalke, or even more Werder against Nuremberg, then you would say, well, this is a draw. It should be a draw, right? It could be, I mean, here at 13%, which go to Hanover, you could say, well, they've been close enough to win the game, even, right? But I still make this line, draw this line of 20% when I say, well, from now on it is a deserved win. And if you want, well, we could just refer to these values, but just to explain once again, pure is without this conversion rate, which could differ, which is usually the case. I mean, Bayern simply, they have a higher conversion rate in the long run, and it simply means they produce the better chances. They take the shot when time has come. So they do not take an early shot or something like that. And they have the better strikers. So you do have three parameters in some sense which raise this value. It would be silly to ignore it. So even if they would not produce the same amount of chances, well, they are in all areas, they are so superior. But this wouldn't quite explain those figures. I should rather maybe do it in this style here, because here I'm counting in the, not the conversion rate. This was a bad explanation. I still could explain why this conversion rate here, which is a real parameter, is higher, right? So you take this from what I just explained, right? So this is higher conversion rate, Leipzig, than Hanover, which usually develops during a season. I should reset them, except for Bayern, but it gets a bit complicated there. Anyway, so we can compare at least these values here, which I tried to explain, which didn't quite work out, but I'm just saying those are close enough to forget about it, right? But here it is counting in the result, right? So you can say, well, I mean, you can see it in this column as well, right? So Dortmund won 3-1, and I was expecting about 2.18, 0.92. So they produced a result close to that. I mean, yeah, it was in some sense perfect. Here you would say, well, they played a little less, which is true. And counting in the goals, well, this is almost the same. So they were close enough to that, right? And it is also close enough to expectancies. So you could say, well, this is actually quite a perfect result. Problem here is that they didn't produce enough chances it is the right difference in some sense, or the right superiority counted here, but it's not in the. It should be maybe well. It's counting. Where am I putting these? Well, it's somewhere else in this. No, it's up here. They should have had one. This is here. They should have had a goal expected 2.175, and they had chances for 1.31 only, right? So they should have scored 1.3 goals, and so those are the most important values that I didn't refer to yet, of course, and they are here on screen. Forgot about it. And they produced chances for just 1.3 goals. So they were, in this sense, they were pretty weak. But as Frankfurt were also pretty far behind those expectancies, it is still the right quotient here between the two, right? They are 2 times better expected about that, and about 2 times better they played, right? Somewhere in there around. So this is a bit lower than that as well. So in some sense, it was close enough. It was mainly, I think, for the corners, because 7-1 is quite a big superiority, right? Those are just values that I'm taking them in. I have a look, and they tell me something. But those are the better values in some sense, right? So I'm predicting this, and they produced like that, and this is in goal expectancies. Yeah. And this is goals they should have scored from this amount of chances. And man, if I forget sometimes what I wanted to say. Anyway, we see here that this, for example, was a real under game. So the goals had been coming. I predicted an under in some sense. I was very right, but the goals still occurred. So can't do a lot. Was a very good bet and under, but you still lost it. But this is massive, right? It's rarely ever this big, right? And actually there was nothing going on really in this game until somewhere in the second half, I think. Can't remember so well now. Anyway, we go through the games now, and I rather refer to these. So Bayern, highly superior, 2.3 goals, and actually they produced even more. So, because Leverkusen had nothing from the game, right? This was, yeah. But they lost a player somewhere. But you can see here that I'm coming pretty close. So, if I can't compare that, I was on an over in this game, which actually was not quite a good bet. In this case, the 3-1 helped a lot. So, but I expected 3.8 goals, so quite a lot. And for Leverkusen being way behind, Bayern didn't care so much. It doesn't matter. They circle the ball around and they get a chance here or there. But usually, well, they were untroubled. They had it. They were a goal down early on after a penalty, but 10 minutes later they were a goal to the goods already. So forget about it. They are untroubled, right? And they are foreseeing or looking forward to that Tuesday game, or when do they play? Champions League at least. So they somehow maybe you feel they can't score, so we don't care so much if we don't score a third. Anyway, it was close enough. Leverkusen did not produce anything. The one chance early on, they got a penalty, scored from there. But it was close to Bayern, even more superior. Just a win by 2, should have even been by more. 18-3 shots, for example. Close to that, but Leverkusen simply behind. Also in the corners, they were twice as much, which were a bit behind. But here 9-1. No, this is other corners. This is shots on target, right? Home on target, away on target. And just the corners. And crosses also dominant. So I'm counting the crosses as well. 13-3 possession was clearly better than expected. and tackles as well. So this is what they blamed Leverkusen for, that they didn't really tackle, which was true until that foul Rafinha Bellarabi, and he was fouled out. He was sent off, Bellarabi, and Rafinha was injured. So this was a pretty mean, pretty mean, and you can understand that Bayern got pretty angry about that, because they are losing the game anyway, and still doing those fouls, red cards, whatever that's good for nothing. Leipzig against Hanover, for example, was a very, very, very good effort by Hanover. They shouldn't have lost the game, rather won. They were 30% better, which is amazing compared to that. But I saw enough from the game. I didn't watch the 90 minutes, but I saw enough from the game to be able to judge that they shouldn't have lost the game. They were very, very, very good. And I mean, I'm not. I mean, you can say sometimes when a team are better than the other, it's because they are weak. It's not the case here. It was because Hannover were very, very good. So if you want some prediction for the next game, maybe Hannover are the pick. Especially if a side loses that are playing well. I think it's a good bet somewhere. But that's a different story. Mainz against Augsburg, for example, they were. If you compare these figures, Mainz were clearly on top. So they actually deserved the win, which happened in the end. But this was, of course, one of those. I mean, we had 34 goals, I think. And, they are counted somewhere else down here, but why should I? Also the average and stuff like that. 34 goals, 21, 30, and so on. But that's... We can stick to this. And so they deserved the win, but it was after 82 minutes, Augsburg even scored the first goal. So they were couldn't be any further away from a win, right? Still, Mainz was one of my picks, so I can be pretty happy that they turned around. I think it was even an over, and this was a very good over, because 3.6 goals in this one. I expected only 2.6, but this was largely to Mainz being so good. They had plenty of shots and plenty of crosses, which makes the main part of that value here. So Mainz very, 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 very good and much better than Augsburg and deserving that late win. You could still say, well, Augsburg had been happy with a point because they are on the road, but I do not accept that. They are too close, all those teams, so they are always looking for the winner as well. They try to defend, but always looking for the chance on the break. So, deserved home win, very late one, exciting one, very good one, for me too. Wolfsburg Hertha. We did have, I can't highlight them both, or can I? No. Which one would it be? It would be this one, but I had to pick the right one. Anyway. It was a 2-2, so that was close enough, I mean. But, if you look at these figures here, or I should go a bit further than that. Forgot again. And this new Excel is really, it is so slow. I can't do it once again. No idea why. Oh, no, I can. Okay, anyway, I mean, we had expected 10 points, or I did, so I may have overrated Hertha a bit, or underrated Wolfsburg, I'm not sure, but it can also happen just in the game. But you see the result, which then says again, well, you've not been that bad, and I was also supporting Hertha. But the Wolfsburg played, instead of 10.5 or 9.1, 22.87, or including the goals, 16.35 goals better. So, percent. So it was rather, Wolfsburg should have won. And you see 15-9, 7-5, 7-2, 15-11. In all areas, they had been better, and they also had been better than expected. Compare this, they had some more shots. Here on target, it is close enough, so but corners, they had 1.2 more, had Hertha had 1.4 less. And here 15-11 is also better than this. Possession is a bit behind. No, it's better. Sorry. 57 instead of 52. So, and also the tackles, they were better than expected. So actually, Wolfsburg should have rather won the game. Yeah, of course. Here I say 20% is the margin. Here I say half a goal. If it's more than half a goal, usually it should be a win. So Wolfsburg rather should have won. Exciting game as well. Hertha took the lead in the second half. Wolfsburg equalized pretty late on. Hertha took the lead again in injury time. And Wolfsburg come back, but they very well deserved it, you have to say, in the end. Let's have a look at the next one, which is, to me, pretty obvious already, because Hoffenheim were from start to finish were better than expected, which you could really see when watching it. I mean, it felt like 0-1, 0-1, it's going to come. And then Düsseldorf scored with a halftime whistle. So it was a tough night then, tough battle then for Hoffenheim. They still managed to equalize after 86 minutes, which wasn't enough, as Düsseldorf got a penalty in injury time to score the winner. And I supported Düsseldorf as well, to be honest, but it wasn't a good bet, which is very obvious when you see this. Hoffenheim like 1.3 goals better, so a lot better than I expected by 0.4 goals. Or where would you see that? Here, this is better than that. 0.4, and here it's 1.3. They played better. So Hoffenheim should have won, no doubt. Düsseldorf pretty lucky, but fought hard for the win, and they got it in the end, but it was lucky one. Can't say other than that. Now we look at Gladbach-Schalke, and Gladbach expected to be 0.2 goals better, and Schalke made it an even contest. You can still say, well, usually Gladbach were winning, so they do not care so much about those stats in the end, right? And if you're winning, you say, okay, you can have the ball and we just defend and wait for the break. But in the end, you should say, well, they play highly professional football, which also means defend your lead, defend what you got. But still, you always have to be careful because, well, as you saw this times, pretty quickly games can be turned around. And also, you should simply score the second and score the winner and look for it. And, well, They sometimes, these days, they just say one goal is enough, so we just defend. Anyway, they wouldn't care for the stats, which no one really would, but as long as you're winning. But you should care if you say, well, we never had the ball. It's all tackle from the opposition, and so we were running out of breath as well, so we lost the game, because you can't defend all the time. It happens still, and anyway, Gladbach, it should have been a draw. That's my conclusion, because those values tell me here. But actually, here it would say this is for the conversion rate that they expected a bit more. Well, it would be too hard to explain. Here it's close enough because, like an even game, you could say minus 1.44. It's still in favor of Schalke. You can see in some values that Schalke had a slight edge, possession again to Gladbach. It was an even game, simply put it like that, and should have been a draw. And the 2-1 that Schalke scored, also in injury time, was too late. But still, they very well deserved it, and actually they should have even won a point, which wasn't the case. But, and now we have the Werder against Nürnberg, and here we can simply say Werder did not underline their favorites at all. It was an even game. Here the same thing happened. Werder took the lead, so somehow maybe they thought, well, we're close enough to winning, so they defended. Still, Nürnberg scored the 1-1 in injury time. here they were still a bit behind, which is due to this conversion rate as well. And still it is close enough because it's clearly less than half a goal. And here as well, those values say, well, it's close enough because they were 4-7 on corners, 40-11, 39. Well, all those values pretty close, and one was in favor of Nuremberg even. So it's close enough. And they deserve the point, I would consider, because it's not enough of superiority. It's less than expected. It's less than 20% clearly. It's less than half a goal. So I would say they deserved it. And it was another late goal, and it was another decisive goal in some sense because it changed the tendency of the game from win to a draw. Anyway, it was a good game, and Nuremberg deserved the point, and I supported Nuremberg as well. And in Freiburg-Stuttgart, I think this was a blank, nothing for me. But he would say, I expected an even game, which was not the case. Stuttgart were the better side. And this was, here I expected even a slight edge for the conversion rate, was a bit higher here. And which turned out to be wrong. So rather, Stuttgart were the better side, and they should have won. And also the voices confirmed that I heard after the game, except for Streich from Freiburg, who usually I like very much what he said, but here I feel he was a bit wrong because he said, well, Stuttgart took their first two real chances and scored 2 goals, which is not quite the truth. And also, I mean, in the end, Stuttgart just had a little more of the game, right? You see it here, 12-11, okay, close enough, 5-5, okay, close enough, 5-8 in their favor, and crosses in their favor, and possession in their favor. So it was a draw in the end, but it was a pretty lucky one for Freiburg. So I think I just leave you with this, and this is a much better review I would consider that you can get from any expert around, because they simply would comment the result and take it as a given, which is and then they would say, well, Dortmund 3-1, okay, deserved, easy win, something like that. Bayern, easy deserved win, same that I say. Leipzig, of course, the better side winning, which is here not the case. Mainz, I think they would say credits to Mainz because they turned it around so late on. You could also say unlucky for Augsburg, but it was simply deserved win. Wolfsburg Hertha, they would maybe say Hertha, good job, lucky point for Wolfsburg for the late equalizer. But I would say, well, lucky for Hertha because they should have lost. Here, they would simply say, well, Düsseldorf great, and Funke, and new in the league, and now they adjusted so well, and instantly won a game, and so on. It's not true. Simply Hoffenheim, much better side, should have won. Gladbach, they would also be a bit wrong about Schalke's effort, although Tedesco, after this game, for example, he said, well, who was the man of the match? That's all he asked, and it was very obvious it was Jan Sommer, which I'm not even sure they agreed, but the balls he stopped, they were just unstoppable, and he still stopped them. So this was one of those 7 on target, which is quite a lot. You see, this is even the maximum value, and he kept them all out. So Schalke very unlucky, which would not be the way people would react unless they're called Tedesco, who was very right in this case. Werder Nuremberg, not a lot to say about that one. They would agree, rather Nuremberg deserved it. Freiburg, they would say, well, good derby, kind of derby, Baden-Württemberg, and a good result for both. In some sense, they had 0 points, now they got 1. But Stuttgart are right. Gomez, who scored 2 goals, but he said, I would give up these 2 goals as long as we had a win, first of all. Secondly, you would say, well, we should have won it, which is very right. Well, Streich was not right. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. That's it. Okay, thanks a lot for watching, and bye. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and see you soon. Bye-bye.